This happened about 5 months ago. I'm Jake, a 32-year-old nurse at a small hospital. I've worked night shifts for nearly a decade. I took pride in my job and cared for my patients. I never thought much about the ghost stories people talked about. I was here to support my family. On my 5th night shift, things started getting weird. It was around 3 a.m. and I walked down the empty hallway. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting long shadows. I stepped into a patient room for a quick check. As soon as I entered, I smelled blood. It was strong and metallic. My heart started racing. I swore I heard a heartbeat from the monitor, but the room was empty. Just a malfunction, I thought. I left quickly, feeling uneasy. The oddities didn't stop. One night, at the nurse's station, I worked on paperwork. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something in the glass. It looked like a person standing behind me. I turned around and no one was there. My stomach dropped. Maybe it was just fatigue playing tricks on me. I rubbed my face, trying to shake it off. Then there were whispers in the break room. Late at night, when I was alone, I'd hear muffled voices. I walked in, but it was always empty. Each time I entered, I felt a chill, like the air had dropped suddenly. I know it sounds crazy, but I swear I could hear them talking just out of reach. I kept thinking, I must be tired. Then I found out about a patient I had cared for a few weeks earlier. He died under strange circumstances, and no one spoke about it. It felt like a dark cloud settled over the ward after that. I thought about what might have happened. Was it something I missed? I avoided that room after that. It just felt wrong, like I shouldn't be there. One night while walking past that same room, I felt a chilling breeze wrap around me. I heard a heart monitor again, clear as day this time. The room was empty, but it sounded real. My hands went ice cold and I froze. I thought I was losing my mind. I didn't know what to believe. Was it all in my head? Then, as I backed away from that room, I thought I saw someone in the glass reflection again. But instead of turning around, I ran. I didn't look back. On my next shift, I tried to stay focused. But when I approached the break room, I noticed a figure in the corner of my eye once more. I panicked and bolted inside, but it was just shadows. My heart raced. I felt like someone was watching me. I wanted to scream. Finally, I sat in a quiet corner trying to shake off the last few weeks. But my mind wouldn't quiet. The whispers, the heartbeat, the reflection haunted me. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was deeply wrong in that hospital. I just didn't know what it was or if it was all in my head. I got up and walked back to my station, my heart pounding. Something was waiting for me in those hallways. I felt it in every nerve. Was it real? Or just my imagination running wild? I forced myself to concentrate on the tasks at hand. Every night brought the same rhythm. Check on patients, rounds, paperwork. But the unease lingered, like a heavy weight that wouldn't shift. On my 7th shift, I entered the break room to grab some coffee. I could still hear whispers in the air, as if remnants of conversations lingered just outside my hearing. It was louder that night. I stood there for a moment, frozen. Then I shook my head and poured my coffee, telling myself that I was tired. But as I turned to leave, I caught sight of something prolonged in the corner of the room. A figure. I blinked and it was gone. Just a trick of light, I thought, but dread seeped into my bones. I glanced down the hallway, half expecting someone to come out of the shadows. Nothing, just emptiness and the faint buzzing of the lights. I headed back to the nurse's station and began checking charts. I stumbled upon the file of that patient, the one who died under mysterious circumstances. His name was in bold letters, and my heart sank as I read through the notes. No clear explanation for his death, just a lot of urgent care needed scribbles. I felt a twinge of guilt. Had I ignored something? As I looked closer, I noticed a note on the bottom of one of the pages. Strange behavior prior to death. What did that mean? My fingers trembled as I turned the page, but it was blank. I frowned. A half-finished story, a piece I needed to understand. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the hallway. I jumped, my heart racing. I set the folder down and rushed toward the sound. I wouldn't back down to it this time. I had to know if there was something wrong. The noise led me to the supply closet, its door slightly ajar. I hesitated, holding my breath. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. No answer. I pushed the door open further and something caught my eye. On the floor lay some supplies, a scattered mess of bandages and syringes. But then I noticed something else. There was a bloody handprint on the wall, the red stark against the white paint. I stepped back, stunned, almost tripping over myself. My instincts screamed for me to get out, but curiosity kept me rooted there. That's when I heard it again, the heartbeat. Not just in my mind this time. It resonated from somewhere deep within the closet, pulsing with an urgency. I swallowed hard, the air thick with fear. I wanted to turn and run, but my feet wouldn't move. The heart monitor was loud now, as if it was calling to me. I slammed the closet door shut and backed away slowly. I had to get away. But when I turned around, my breath caught in my throat. Standing at the end of the corridor was a figure. I could see the outline clearly. It was him, the patient from the file. I blinked, and he was gone, swallowed by the shadows. In that moment, I realized I could no longer dismiss what was happening. There was something very wrong in that hospital. I just didn't know how deep it ran. I stood frozen in the hallway, heart pounding. The space felt heavier, darker somehow, as if the shadows were alive. I had to tell someone about what I'd seen. The handprint, the figure. But who would believe me? My feet moved before I could think, carrying me back to the nurse's station. I needed to get my head straight. I tried finding comfort in routine tasks, checking on patient charts and answering the phone, but the weight of the night pressed down on me. I couldn't shake the image of that bloody handprint or the ghostly figure. The clock ticked loudly in the quiet of the station, a reminder of the long hours still ahead. Just as I settled back into my work, a voice cut through my thoughts. "Hey, you okay?" It was Sarah, one of the more seasoned nurses. Her brow was creased with concern. I hesitated. "Yeah, just a weird night, nothing unusual, you know." She eyed me suspiciously. "Right, the usual weirdness. Just make sure you don't let it mess with your head." I smiled weakly, but it felt hollow. Somehow I knew tonight wasn't done with me yet. Not long after, I returned to my rounds. As I stepped into room 304, I felt an odd chill. The patient in the bed lay still, eyes closed, but the monitor beeped erratically. I leaned closer. "Mr. Edwards," I called softly. "Are you all right?" His eyes snapped open, wide and frantic. "They're coming for me," he rasped, his voice barely above a whisper. Panic washed over me. It was sleep deprivation playing tricks, right? "Who's coming?" I asked, trying to sound calm. He pointed toward the window, and my throat tightened when I saw shadows moving outside. "They're here," he cried, blinking rapidly. Just then, a loud bang echoed from the hallway, causing me to jump back. I rushed out of the room, but no one was there, just the empty corridor. My gut turned. I had to know if Mr. Edwards was hallucinating or if there was something else at play. Maybe he'd seen something I hadn't. As I rounded the corner, I overheard hushed voices coming from the supply closet again. My heart raced. Against my better judgment, I crept closer. I could make out snippets. "We need to keep it quiet." "It's not safe." Adrenaline surged through me. I needed to hear more. Gathering my courage, I pushed the door open just a crack. The light from the hall spilled into the small space, revealing a couple of nurses I recognized, their faces pale and strained. "I'll handle it," one said. "But if anyone knows—" He trailed off, glancing toward the door. I pulled back just in time, holding my breath. How deep did this go? I needed answers, but I'd crossed a line. When I returned to the nurse's station, it was eerily quiet. Sarah was gone. My pulse quickened as I peered down the hallway toward the break room. The shadows seemed thicker there, almost alive. I could feel a pull, an invitation and a threat both. Just then, I heard it again. The heartbeat. But this time it was louder. An urgent echo against the empty walls. Something was calling me back to that supply closet. Something dark and insistent. And I knew what I had to do. I took a deep breath and moved back toward the supply closet. Each step felt weighted, pumping adrenaline through my veins as I tried to toy with thoughts of what I might find. When I reached the door, I hesitated. The heartbeat thudded in my ears, syncing with the quickened pace of my heart. I pushed the door open slowly, half expecting to see the two nurses still inside, sharing whatever secret they locked away. But the space was empty now, just a musty smell and the echo of my own breath. I peered around, looking for something, anything, that would explain the tension. The shelves were lined with supplies, but nothing stood out. I turned, ready to leave when something caught my eye at the far corner. A notebook was open on the ground. I knelt to pick it up, glancing over the scribbled notes. At the top of the page I found the words, "Patient 204, irregularities." My stomach twisted. That was the room where Mr. Edwards was. Were they keeping things quiet about him? As I flipped through the pages, I saw more names, more notes scribbled hastily. My eyes widened as I read snippets. Watching, not safe, caution advised. Each phrase felt like a warning sent directly to me. Just then, footsteps approached, and I quickly shoved the notebook back in place, standing up to catch my breath. A moment later, I nearly stumbled into Sarah. She wore a stern expression, her eyes narrowing as I backed away. "Why are you here?" she asked sharply, glancing over her shoulder like she feared someone might overhear. I just wanted to check on supplies," I said, voice trembling slightly. "But I need to know about Mr. Edwards. What's going on with him?" Her posture relaxed for just a moment before she scowled again. "You don't know what you're asking. Just remember, some things are better left alone." "Sarah, I can't," I insisted. It all felt bigger than me, a shadow creeping toward the light. "I need the truth. I saw things tonight." "That doesn't matter. You need to focus on your patients. Stop digging," she snapped, and the intensity faded just as fast as it arrived, leaving behind a tired look. I opened my mouth to protest, but the moment slipped away, thickening the air around me. Something had shifted. This wasn't just a matter of sleep deprivation anymore. It felt as if I had stumbled into something far more dangerous. Then it hit me. The energy in the air. I turned my head toward the hallway. The heartbeat returned, more pronounced and desperate, but this time it was accompanied by faint whispers. "Help!" A voice drifted, shrouded in despair. It was definitely coming from down the corridor, and it wasn't just Mr. Edwards' panicked voice I heard repeating in my mind. I looked back at Sarah, but she had already turned her back, walking toward the break room, leaving me with an uncertain choice. Should I follow the sound? I took a step into the dim hallway, drawn by that plea. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready to face it head on. But deep down, dread twisted in my stomach. The shadows danced along the walls, and I felt myself being pulled toward whatever was waiting. Then came the chilling thought. What if I wasn't the one doing the chasing? What if something out there was hunting me? I pressed forward, the whispers growing louder with every cautious step I took. They echoed in my mind, mingling with the pounding of my heart. Help! It was a faint sound, yet it seemed to slice through the silence of the hospital, urgent and full of pain. As I ventured deeper into the corridor, the sterile lights flickered overhead. The shadows squirmed against the walls, and I glanced behind me, half certain I'd find someone trailing me. But no one was there, just the haunting sound of my own breath. I reached the corner that led to the patient rooms where I knew Mr. Edwards was. My feet hesitated, and I listened carefully. The voice came again, a desperate cry. "Please!" With a sinking feeling in my stomach, I turned toward room 204. The door was slightly ajar, and a sliver of darkness poured out. I stepped closer, heart racing as dread and curiosity battled within me. I pushed the door open. Inside, I found Mr. Edwards, sitting up in his bed, eyes wide and glassy. He looked disheveled, as if he hadn't slept in days. The sheets were bunched up, and he was staring at something across the room. "It's coming," he rasped, his voice trembling. "You have to help me." "Help you with what?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He pointed toward the corner of the room where shadows merged to form something indistinct. I blinked, trying to focus, but it felt like staring into thick fog. I took a few cautious steps inside. "Mr. Edwards, you need to calm down," I said, though I felt my own pulse quicken. "What do you see?" "It knows I know," he whispered, his voice trembling. "It's waiting for you to discover the truth." My skin prickled as I tried to make sense of his words. What truth? Suddenly my breath hitched. A sound, a scuffle in the hallway. Someone approached, their footsteps echoing like drums in the stifling silence. I turned, panic rising in my chest. Then the door swung open completely, revealing a nurse I didn't recognize. Her white uniform glinted in the harsh light. She had an unsettling smile, one etched with something sinister. "Oh, there you are. I thought we lost you," she said, her tone far too sweet. "Lost me?" I managed, glancing back at Mr. Edwards, who was now eerily silent, eyes locked on the nurse. "Such a troublesome case," she continued, stepping closer. "We need to keep things under control, you know?" A knot formed in my gut. There was something in her eyes, something that sent a chill down my spine. I wanted to flee. "Time to say goodbye, dear," the nurse said softly, reaching for me with an unsettling calmness. That's when I saw it, an ominous shape shifting in the shadows behind her, pulsing with an energy that felt alive. My heart dropped. The whispers grew louder, drowning out everything but that single word echoing through my mind. "Run." Without thinking, I bolted past the nurse, pushing through the door and back into the corridor. I heard her call out, but I didn't stop. As I raced down the hall, urgency consumed me. I needed to get to safety, away from whatever darkness lurked here. But as I glanced back, the nurse's smile lingered in my mind, twisted and haunting, and I felt the weight of what I'd uncovered pressing down hard on my soul. What was happening? And why was it all pointing to me? I sprinted down the dimly lit hallway, fueled by fear and adrenaline. My breath came in quick gasps, and I focused on the sound of my footsteps echoing against the sterile floor. I had to find a way out. The faint glow from the overhead lights was almost comforting, but it quickly dimmed as I rounded another corner. My heart raced. I thought about checking the staff room or one of the exits, but I didn't know what was behind me. The nurse, the shadows, were they following me? I heard a voice, soft yet urgent, echoing down the corridor. "Help!" It was a different voice this time, a woman's. I hesitated, my instincts battling between the urge to run and the instinct to assist. But what if it was a trap? As I neared the source of the call, I found myself at another patient room, 207. The door was fully closed, the wooden frame stark against the wall. What if this was another confusing situation, like Mr. Edwards? I took a breath and knocked lightly. "Is someone in there?" I called out. The silence that followed felt oppressive. Just as I was about to knock again, the door creaked open. Inside was an elderly woman lying in bed, her thin frame bundled under the hospital sheets. Her hair was a tangle of white, and her eyes glimmered with an unsettling mix of clarity and dread. "You heard me," she breathed, her voice fragile. "You have to help me. They're coming for me." A chill ran down my spine, and every instinct screamed at me to leave. "Who's coming?" I asked, swallowing hard. "They know," she said, her gaze darting around the room as if the invisible pursuers were already inside. "They're always watching. If they catch you." Then she suddenly stopped, eyes narrowing on something behind me. I turned quickly, heart thundering, but found nothing there, only the quiet of the hospital's night shift. "What is it?" I pressed, desperation creeping into my voice. "Run!" she shouted, her voice rising in panic. "You don't understand." Just then, the lights flickered overhead, plunging the room into shadows. I stumbled back, instinctively retreating. In that brief moment of darkness, the atmosphere thickened, and I felt an icy breath against my neck. Then the lights flickered back on, and I found myself alone in the hallway again. The woman's cries faded away, and the corridor felt more isolating than before. Panic had settled in my gut like a stone. I turned to run again but stopped when I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. Shadows in the far end of the hallway shifted, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw the nurse again, her smile plastered on her face. But it was different this time. Angrier, more predatory. With every ounce of resolve, I took off in the opposite direction. My pulse raced as I sprinted toward the stairwell, desperate to escape whatever force had claimed this place. I reached the door, pushing it open, but instead of the stairs, I was met with a dimly lit landing. A flicker of hope surged through me. Perhaps there was another way out. But as I turned back toward the door I just came from, I caught sight of a figure stepping through. It was the nurse, and she wasn't alone. "You shouldn't have run," she purred, her voice coated in a sickly sweetness. Just then something moved behind me on the landing, something dark and vast. I felt my breath hitch. I was trapped. Suddenly that pulsing energy from before surged around me, and I realized I had no choice but to face whatever it was. My heart raced as I prepared to confront it, whatever it was, and as I turned to face my fate, I knew that the night was far from over. I squared my shoulders, determined to face whatever darkness lurked behind me. I couldn't afford to be cornered in this stairwell with the nurse and her eerie companions. The flickering light cast long shadows that danced along the walls, making it hard to focus. "Stay away from her," I shouted, my voice cracking with fear. The nurse's smile faded, replaced by a grimace that twisted her features into something monstrous. I felt like I was standing on the precipice of a nightmare come to life. The nurse took a step forward, her hands reaching out slowly as if savoring my terror. But just then, the dark shape behind me moved again, forcing my attention back to it. I could barely make out its form, a sprawling mass that seemed to absorb the light around it. I was frozen. Both figures were closing in on me. In a moment of instinct, I swung around and stumbled back toward the landing, desperate to put some distance between us. But the dark figure surged forward, making a sound that sent chills through me. It was like an eerie whisper echoing all around, as if the shadows themselves were trying to speak. I darted to the side and lunged down a narrow hallway branching off from the landing. My mind screamed for me to run faster, but my legs felt like lead. I barely registered the cold tiled floor beneath my feet. I needed a place to hide. The hallway was lined with more patient rooms, most of them dark and still. I glanced into one, hoping for a sanctuary, but the emptiness inside it was suffocating. What had happened to these people? My pulse quickened as another thought struck me. Were all of them gone? I could be next. Focusing on my breathing, I approached room 209. I knocked loudly. "Is anyone in there?" The silence was agonizing, and all I could hear was the thumping of my heart. Just as I turned to leave, the door creaked open. A young man in a hospital gown stood at the threshold, his face pale and gaunt, as if he had just emerged from a fever dream. "What are you doing here?" he asked in a voice that trembled. "I'm trying to get out," I replied, still glancing over my shoulder. "They're coming for me." His eyes widened slightly. "You can't let them catch you. You don't know what happens." "What do you mean?" I asked, desperate for answers. The nurse, the shadows. I felt an urgency rising inside me. "Who are they?" "I can't explain," he stuttered. Then he looked past me, eyes widening with terror. "They're here." Before I could turn to see what he was staring at, the hallway lights blinked in and out. The walls warped for a brief second, almost as if the building itself was alive and reacting to our fear. "Run!" he yelled, pushing me forward into the room. I stumbled inside and turned to slam the door shut. Just as it clicked into place, I heard a scratching sound from the other side, followed by the sickly sweet voice of the nurse. "You can't hide from us. We know where you are." I couldn't breathe. The walls of the room seemed to close in around me, and the flicker of hope I had felt was extinguished. I had found refuge, but at what cost? "Who are they?" I whispered to the young man, my mind racing. He shook his head, panic etched across his features. "You'll find out soon enough." And that was when I realized I hadn't just run into a room filled with fear. I had run straight into the heart of the mystery. The room was small, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. My eyes darted around, searching for any sign of safety, but all I saw were stark, clinical surroundings. A bed, a bedside table, and a single chair in one corner. Anxiety coiled tighter in my chest. "Do you know what they are?" I asked the young man, hoping for some clarity, but he only shook his head vigorously, his eyes wide. "I just know they can take you. They already took so many," he whispered, words laced with unease. I took a step back, pressing against the door. "What do you mean? Are they ghosts?" "No, that's not how it works. There's something else, something worse," he stammered. The way he looked at me made my skin crawl. There was a mix of fear and despair in his eyes that told me he had seen things I could only imagine. A sharp knocking interrupted our conversation. I jumped, heart racing. The scratching sound from before grew louder, more insistent. "We know you're in there." The nurse's voice sang through the door, seemingly dripping with malice. "You can't escape, darling." I turned back to the man. "What do we do?" His face fell. "There's only one way out. Every time they come, they take someone new. They'll keep coming until they fill this place." I wished for more information, a plan, anything, but all I could see was the door, growing weaker with every knock. "What do you mean by the only way out?" He took a deep breath. "It's about sacrifice. To stay alive, you need to take someone else's place." Panic flooded my veins as I processed his words. "I'm not going to hurt anyone," I declared, shaking my head. A loud crash echoed from the door, rattling the frame. My heart raced anew. The nurse was persistent, the sounds growing frantic. I could feel the energy in the room shift. "What have you done? You shouldn't have come here. Just listen," he shouted over the noise. "You have to decide. They won't give you time." His words hung in the air, heavy with urgency. I glanced between him and the door, adrenaline coursing through me. They were right outside, and the moment of choice was rapidly approaching. Would I let them in, or was there something more sinister at play? To my horror, I saw the silhouette of the nurse through the frosted glass. She pressed her face against it, and for a moment, our eyes locked. Her gaze was piercing, cold, and calculating. She was hungry. "We can still escape if you trust me," the young man urged. "But you need to act now." I felt a tug of desperation. The room was closing in, and my only chance was standing before me. I didn't know whether to trust him or not, but time was running out. "Okay," I whispered, my voice shaky. "What do we do?" But before he could answer, the lights flickered dramatically and then plunged us into darkness. All around me the whispers rose, echoing through the room. The scratching sound ceased, replaced by something far more sinister. "What is happening?" I yelled, my heart pounding. "Stay close," he shouted as I grappled with the sudden void. And that's when I felt it. Something cold brushed against my arm. I froze. Then I heard it, a soft, raspy voice floating in the darkness. "Hello, dear." My breath caught in my throat. They were here, and this time it felt as if they were all around me. I felt my heartbeat surge. The voice drifted through the darkness, chilling me to the bone. I squinted, trying to see through the blackened room, but it was useless. "Who are you?" I croaked, forcing the words out despite the knot of fear tightening in my throat. No answer came, just the skittering sound of something brushing against the floor. It was not just the voice I sensed. It was a presence, a weight in the air that I couldn't shake. The whispers grew louder, swirling like wind around me, and I struggled to maintain my grip on reality. "Stay with me," the young man shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. I felt the warmth of his arm brushing against mine, grounding me. "We need to move fast. Don't let them separate us." I nodded, though I was still frozen in dread. My instincts screamed to flee, but I knew the door was no longer an option. Ice crawled up my spine as I felt another cold brush, this time against my leg, a fragile touch that sent my anxiety spiraling. "Help us, we need help!" A different voice called, layered with a broken, eerie echo. It wasn't just the nurse now, there were others. Panic washed over me as the darkness vibrated with their presence, their hopes warring against my own desire to escape. "Is that you?" I gasped, my voice barely a whisper. "What do you want?" Why are you here? I cursed the weakness that made me tremble. Not all are lost. The voice coiled around me, laced with sorrow. We just want to be free. Then help us, the young man shouted. I could sense his determination, though I didn't understand how he could hold on to courage in this suffocating darkness. The room crackled, and without warning, flickers of light ignited sporadically, casting ghastly shadows that danced along the walls. Each flash revealed warped faces and expressions of agony, trapped in an endless loop of torment. I gasped, nearly stumbling as the darkness deepened again. It's a trap, I shouted, panic coursing through me. They're lying! No, he said, desperation forcing his tone to rise. They're trying to warn us. We need to listen. In that moment of chaos, I caught a glimpse of something moving in the dark. A figure slid across the far wall, impossibly thin and elongated. It stopped, turning towards me, its features obscured but unmistakably alive. My breath quickened as I realized it wasn't just another whisper. It was something more tangible. Join us, it hissed. The sound reverberated and I nearly stumbled back, but I was anchored by the young man's arm. You can save yourself. No, I cried, the refusal spilling from my lips as instinct kicked in. I won't. But then, out of the shadows, the soft, raspy voice slithered back. You've already made a choice. You are already ours. Suddenly the lights flared to life, revealing the sinister nurse with her twisted smile, an impossible silhouette grinning at me from the doorway. My blood ran cold as I realized she wasn't just waiting to come in. She was ready to collect her debt. I needed to think. There had to be a way out. But as I turned to the man beside me, he was backing away, a different look in his eyes, fear mixed with something darker. Listen, he said with a quiver, we might not have much time. You really need to decide who to trust. The door rattled violently, and my pulse quickened. That was the moment I knew the stakes were real. What lay behind that door could determine everything. Then I heard a laugh. Not just any laugh. It was one that echoed within me, taunting, promising dark things. The figures surged forward, their whispers drowning every sense of reason. And that's when I realized the choice wasn't just mine anymore. The others were as much a part of this torment as I was. I stumbled back, overwhelmed by the swirling chaos surrounding me. The air thickened with despair, shadows swirling like smoke, isolating me from the truth I desperately sought. The nurse's mocking grin was a reminder of the nightmare pressing down on us, escalating every second. Without thinking, I turned to the young man beside me. What do we do? My voice wavered, desperation creeping into my tone. His gaze flicked back and forth between me and the door, trembling. In that moment, I made a choice. We need to push through, I said, more to convince myself than him. We can't keep hiding. We have to face this together. He hesitated but nodded, determination flickering in his eyes. All right, on 3, he said, glancing at the door, which rattled again, the nurse's laughter echoing on the other side. 1, 2, 3. We charged the door, shoving it open just as it cracked, light spilling into the darkness like a flood. I half expected the shadows to swallow us whole, but they recoiled, frozen in the sudden illumination. As we burst into the corridor, the world shifted. I could see the ethereal outlines of patients' rooms, faces peering through darkness, some pleading, others wide-eyed, all trapped in their own cycle of torment. I couldn't tell if they were alive or mere apparitions, mere echoes of grief. I felt sick. Keep moving, the young man shouted, and we sprinted down the hallway, the sound of frantic whispers echoing behind us, mingling with the sinister laughter of the nurse. Suddenly I skidded to a halt. The exit! I pointed toward an emergency door at the far end, a glimmer of hope amidst the tempest of fear. But as we approached it, shadows slithered longer, pooling near our feet, ready to ensnare us. Go! I yelled, pushing him ahead, my heart racing. I could feel the cold tendrils creeping around my ankles, trying to hold me back. The door loomed closer, beckoning, but the weight of the air pressed down like a suffocating blanket. Just as I thought we were safe, I turned to see the nurse, more solid now, her eyes gleaming with madness, standing mere steps away. "You can't escape," she screeched, a feral look twisted on her face. But the young man was already pushing on, his fingers tightening on the handle of the door. "We can make it," he shouted back at me, the light spilling out behind him, radiant and liberating. I took a deep breath, the mounting dread urging me forward. I felt the icy pull of the hospital closing in, a remnants of grasping hands trying to pull me back into its depths. "Don't look back, Jake," I screamed, catching my resolve and sprinting after him. With one final lunge, we flung ourselves through the emergency door. The world exploded into blinding daylight. The sound of whispers and laughter faded, replaced by the cadence of distant sirens and the rustling leaves of trees swaying in the wind. As I looked back, momentarily frozen in disbelief, the door swung shut behind us, the light flickering one last time. I felt the weight lift, but a strange shiver lingered up my spine. "What just happened?" I panted, glancing around at the familiar hospital parking lot, the chaos of the night still fogging my senses. "Did we—" He hesitated, searching my eyes for answers. "Did we escape?" The weight of uncertainty hung heavy between us. I nodded slowly, though the question remained. The shadows, the figures, had we left them behind, or simply postponed their grasping hands? But before I could voice my doubts, a distant voice wafted across the lot. "Help!" A soft whisper in the wind, echoing with the weight of familiarity. I felt my pulse quicken, dread pooling in my stomach. I had made it out, but someone, something was still looking for help. As we moved away from the hospital, the reality of what we had faced lingered like a phantom echo in my mind. I still couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't. The uncertainty of the night twisted inside me, a question that would linger long after the sun set again. I had moved on, left the shadows behind, but the memories haunted me. I glanced back one last time, but the hospital stood eerily quiet under the golden rays of light, a dark secret resting beneath its walls, leaving me wondering if I had truly escaped, or if the shadows would always be waiting to reclaim what they lost. I turned to walk away. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if anyone else felt it too, if the whispers still weaved through the halls of that hospital. I guess some questions are better left unanswered.